Congratulations to Mark Carney for winning the Canadian federal election, but I think if he had had a better YouTube channel, he could have won with a majority in the House of Commons instead of the minority that he now has to work with. One reason that I believe this is because of this YouTuber who is spearheading a political movement and has grown from fewer than 100,000 subscribers at the beginning of 2024 to 1.3 million subscribers as of April 2025. I think there's a lot to be learned from his channel, but I'll get into that later. The other reason that I think this is because of what happened in last year's US presidential election, the so-called podcast election. These are the total views on YouTube alone of the different podcasts that Donald Trump and Kamala Harris did, with the Trump videos in red, of course, and the Harris ones in blue. I found 14 podcasts that Donald Trump did. Dr. Phil, Logan Paul's Impulsive, and the All In podcast way back in June of 2024, Bryson DeChambeau in July, Aiden Ross and Theo Von in August, and in October were Dave Ramsey, Ben Shapiro, Flagrant, Bussin' with the Boys, Patrick Bet David, Mark Calloway, Nelk, and last but definitely not least, Joe Rogan. Kamala Harris only did 5 podcasts as far as I know. They were All the Smoke on the 30th of September, then Call Her Daddy, The Breakfast Club, and Club Shay Shay in October, and finally Dr. Mike at the start of November. Not only did Trump do many more views than Harris, helped by the fact that he started a few months earlier, but his videos got a lot more views. His average was over 11 million views, and the most viewed of his was, of course, Joe Rogan with 58 million views currently. Kamala's average, on the other hand, was less than 1 million views, and her most viewed was Club Shay Shay with 1.7 million views. Obviously, these are podcasts rather than videos on their own channels, but the point is that people want to get to know their politicians in a way that other forms of media don't quite achieve. The podcast election wasn't about podcasts. Podcasts were just the playing fields on which matches took place, but the game was about how to use video to let people get to know you and to trust you as a politician. And unfortunately, this insight doesn't seem to have landed at all with the two major parties in Canada. Mark Carney did The Daily Show with Jon Stewart back in January 2025, which got almost 6 million views on YouTube alone. And then the others were all in April, starting with the Prof G Pod, Global News, Inside the Village, and finally 22 Minutes. Pierre Poilievre was interviewed by Jordan Peterson back in January of 2025, and that video has 5.7 million views on YouTube currently. Then he did Check Media later in January, and in April was on The Knowledge Project, and he also did Global News. So people want to hear these politicians make their cases in a more detailed, robust, and personal way than is possible through campaign speeches and videos or televised debates. But they didn't really take up the challenge through podcasts. There isn't a lot going on in this graph. The 2 most viewed videos were from before Mark Carney had even announced that he would be running for leader of the Liberal Party, let alone called the snap election. And half these videos are mainstream media using YouTube as a secondary distribution channel. But as poor a showing as they made on the podcast scene, you'll see that there was even less effort made to reach out to people through Mark Carney's own YouTube channel. It's possible that because the Canadian election timeline is so much shorter than in the US, and the election was called unexpectedly early, that having an effective YouTube strategy was simply deprioritized in favor of tried and tested traditional political campaigning, which I think was a real pity, possibly an expensive mistake for the Liberal Party. I think that Mark Carney's campaign and the Liberal Party's results would have been materially better had they diverted just a small percentage of their campaign budget and time into an effective YouTube strategy. But I will only know for sure in the fullness of time once there are more elections and so more data that I can use to robustly test that hypothesis. But if you agree with me already, or you're watching this years later after I've been proven right, then let's get into why I think that Mark Carney's YouTube channel completely misses the point of YouTube and what can be learned from this other super successful political YouTuber. In case you missed it, Mark Carney took over from Justin Trudeau as the Prime Minister of Canada on the 9th of March this year. Not in a national election, but through a change in the Liberal Party's leadership. He called a snap election, which took place on the 28th of April, and which he won, something which seemed impossible a few months ago when the Liberal Party were trailing the Conservatives by more than 20 points in the polls. So it was a remarkable result, and I'm sure he's quite relieved to still be PM after less than 2 months in the post. But if the Liberals had won just 3 more of the 343 seats, they would not just have won, but won with a majority, which would have been a massive bonus to them. So when the celebratory parties are all over, the question that will be on their mind is, what could they have done more to take them that teeny tiny bit further and have won with a majority? And with that in mind, let's look at Mark Carney's YouTube channel. His first video, Mark Carney in Edmonton, was published on the 16th of January 2025 and was a live broadcast of his speech announcing that he was running to be leader of the Liberal Party. The second video uploaded to his channel was on the 24th of January 2025 and it was called Why I'm Running. And you won't be surprised to learn that it isn't his top marathon training tips, but just a stock standard political campaign video. And these two videos sum up all the content on his channel. Every video is either a media statement or a speech, or it's a highly produced campaign video or advert. There's nothing produced specifically for YouTube and no semblance of a strategy. Basically, someone in the campaign team has been told to make a YouTube channel for Mark Carney and upload everything that goes out to mainstream media to that channel, as well as, live streaming some speeches. And that's what they've done. To their credit, they've done a little bit more. They've got different videos with different thumbnails for English and French, and they've also done vertical cropped videos to optimize for shorts. But these are marginal improvements that go on top of a good strategy. They're not a substitute for good strategy. And the result is exactly as expected. His channel only has 13,000 subscribers. That's 0.03% of the population for which he is Prime Minister. And his videos hardly get any views. Those two outliers with more than 100,000 views are Elbows Up Canada, published on the 22nd of March, and Canada is Everything, published on the 24th of March, both of which are videos with Mike Myers of Austin Powers fame. Then there are a couple with 10 or 20,000 views, but the vast majority of the 169 videos on his channel have 1,000 views or less. And I've included shorts and live videos in this analysis. It's not solely long-form videos. I think this next graph illustrates what is going on even better. These are the hourly views generated over the last 2 weeks for each of his videos. Other than videos published in the last 2 weeks, almost all the videos are getting single-digit views per hour. The three exceptions are Elbows Up Canada, and Canada is Everything, but that's the Mike Myers effect. And then the only other video older than 2 weeks still getting more than 10 views per hour is Building Canada Strong, published on the 31st of March. It very much is a campaign video, but Mark Carney is without a jacket or tie and is sitting at what could be his dining room table with a mug on it and is talking about the housing shortage and what he thinks should be done about it. This graph really does speak volumes. If this channel was a resource optimized to reach out to new people, let them get to know who Mark Carney is, what he stands for, what his plans are, then there would have been views across the whole catalogue of videos as people engaged with the political process in Canada. But no, the reality is the opposite. There is some viewership as a new video is uploaded, a week, 2 at the most, and then the video dies. That's why the only videos with any real views currently are ones published in the second half of April. This is what you would expect from a channel with a dedicated but small group of fans. So Mark Carney's videos are not only getting hardly any views, they are most probably from party members and people who would have voted Liberal anyway. If what you want is a way to let party members see the latest advert that you've produced, then having a hodgepodge of campaign material as your YouTube channel is fine. But if you want your channel to be an asset to your campaign, and it really could have been, then you need to have a completely different strategy. Now, juxtapose Mark Carney's YouTube channel, the exemplar of an ineffective YouTube strategy for a politician, with that of Gary Stevenson, who has quite literally got 1.3 million people to subscribe to his political movement, which is about putting pressure on elected politicians, primarily in the UK, and get them to address rising wealth inequality through a wealth tax. He doesn't seem to want to get elected to any office, so he's very different to most politicians in that regard. But the principles of what he's doing are identical. He's trying to build trust, inform people about a big socio-economic issue that he's identified and describes, and then motivate them to taking some sort of a political action to remedy the problem. So even though there's a lot of unexplored territory for politicians on YouTube, I think Gary's channel is a really good starting place to see what works to engage people on political issues. If we look at each of his long-form videos' total views by publication date, You can see that he has been going at this for a while, since the middle of 2020, so about 5 years now. He really picked up the volume of videos in late 2021, but stopped completely in the second half of 2023 before picking up right where he left off at the very end of 2023. Went solidly until after summer 2024 before taking 4 months off and picking up again at the end of 2024. And in his latest video, he's announced that he's taking 2 months off. I think the first break was to concentrate on writing his book, and the second break and the current break are both just normal holidays. His most viewed long-form video, posted on the 19th of January 2025, is titled, "What Does Elon Musk Want?" and has 2.3 million views currently. Of his other recent videos, say from the start of 2025 until now, 3 have about 1.3 million views, and the rest have basically between 500,000 and 1 million views. I think it's quite telling that the ratio of views per video to total channel subscribers, which is 1.3 million, is basically between 50 and 100% on all of his recent long-form videos, 200% for his most viewed one. That's a signal of a very active community. If we had access to his data, I think we'd find that a relatively high percentage of his views come from subscribers. I think even Mr. Beast would struggle to crack a view to current subscriber ratio of 50 to 100% on all of the videos that he's uploaded so far in 2025. I mean, we don't have to speculate. I can pull up his data quickly. I'm not going to make a nice graph. Let's just look at the raw data and see what it looks like. So let's start off by importing all of Mr. Beast's data. There he is. Sure, 389 million subscribers. Every time I look at it, it's like 10 or 20 million more than the time before. But that means he's going to need to crack about 200 million views to be breaking that 50% views to current subscribers ratio on recent videos. Well, not quite 200 million, 194.5 million. So let's have a look at his raw data. This is each of his videos. Scrolling down, well, let's do it faster than that. Cool. There we go. Long's changed to shorts about here. So that's his last long video, his most recent one, from the 26th of April. So he has 7 long-form videos posted so far in 2025, and all of them are below 200 million. This one here gets the closest, right? I spent 100 hours inside the parents. Yeah, that was a big video. I can see why it's got so many views. But still, that's less than 50% of his current subscribers. And the rest are all closer to like 25% of his current subscribers and less, right? So yeah, nothing close to Gary's consistent 50 to 100% ratio. Let's look at another big channel. How about the Diary of a CEO? 10.3 million subscribers, really good. So a video has to be cracking 5 million to get 50% ratio of views to current subscribers. Let's go have a look at his raw data. Look at that, he only has long form videos. He doesn't have any short form videos on his channel. But what he does have is a lot of videos already posted in 2025. How many is this? 35 videos that he's posted so far in 2025. And the views, okay, so we need to crack 5 million to be 50% of his 10 million subs. 3.8, 3.6, anything higher than that, 3.7. No, the highest is this one here, this earliest one in the year, posted the day after New Year's Day. Dopamine expert, doing this once a day fixes your dopamine, what alcohol is doing to your brain. Sure, capitals for every word, 2 exclamation point. There's a lot of puncture. There's a lot going on in this title, and it's long. Hey, how long is this title? 96 characters long. It's interesting. I think there's maybe a story about how Stephen Bartlett does his titles. But that's not this story, right? This story is about how many views he's getting as a ratio to his current subscribers, and it's 38% is the highest, and everything else is lower. Some of it closer to like 10%, right? So yeah, again, nothing close to Gary's 50 to 100% on every single video consistently. What about a channel that's grown a lot recently? I'm going to do Nisha. I know she's grown to over 1 million subscribers as well in the last year or two. Let's have a look. 1.6 million subscribers. So yeah, doing very well. So her videos need to be breaking 0.8 million, so 800,000 views to be beating 50% views to current subscriber ratio. Let's find her latest videos. There's the latest long form video. And that's all of them for 2025. Okay, so there are a couple that are breaking 800,000, right? There's one that's breaking 1.6 million, right? That's 1.8 million. So that's over 100% views to current subscribers. This one here is what, 75, 80% views to current subscribers. So they're both in that range, the Gary Stevenson range, shall we call it. But the rest are much, much lower, right? Like less than 25%, some, yeah, 10, 15%, more like it. So for Gary to be consistently getting views on his recent videos of 50% of his current subscribers, 100% in a few cases, 200% in one case, is a really strong signal that the community he has built around his channel want to hear more from him and are on board with the mission that he has. And that is absolute gold dust to a politician. And it's why I'm proposing that if you're a politician and want to see what works on YouTube, you start off by looking at his channel. If I haven't convinced you yet, look at this next graph showing the views per hour each of Gary's long form videos has received over the last 2 weeks. The oldest video, which is still getting more than 10 views per hour currently, is from way back in late 2021. There are a few through 2022 and even more in 2023. Over half the videos he published in 2024 are still getting double-digit views per hour. And not just double-digit, they're getting 30, 40, 50, even 60 views per hour despite their age. Then there's this one here called How to Get Rich, posted on the 14th of April 2024, which is still getting 150 views per hour. A bit clickbaity for my taste, so might have some extra hollow views from people just trying to make money. But I could only know that for sure if I saw the viewer retention graph on that video. And then in 2025, all of his videos break double-digit views per hour currently. Many breaking 50 views per hour, some breaking 100 views per hour, and then his most recent 2 videos bringing in 1,000 and 2,000 views per hour currently, and breaking the graph so that we can't easily see much definition in the graph before those 2 videos. But if we just rewind the graph by 2 videos, the graph becomes readable again, and you'll see that there isn't this tail off into single-digit views per hour for videos older than 2 weeks as there was with Mark Carney's graph. Remember, Mark Carney only had 3 videos older than 2 weeks still getting more than 10 views per hour, 2 of which were with Mike Myers. So not only is Gary's audience hanging on to his every word when he puts out a new video, it looks like new subscribers are actively going into his back catalogue, and maybe some of his older videos are also still ranking in search. So what has Gary done to achieve this amazing success? Well, fair disclosure, this is where my analysis gets a little bit less data-driven and a little bit more speculative based on my own opinion. You can absolutely disagree with me in the comments. I'd love to hear from you what you think the reason for his success has been. But I think that much of his success is down to his ability to be intimate with the audience and build a lasting connection. But also that his success was enabled by a macro shift that has happened either on YouTube, but more probably in society at large. I'll get to that macro shift shortly, but first let's talk about the 3 levels of how Gary builds that real connection with the audience. And these are superficially, stylistically, and substantively. Superficially, you can see he's sitting at his own kitchen table. Not a set made up to look like his kitchen, but his actual kitchen. There's usually a mug of tea on the table, maybe a plate of biscuits, his laptop and some other paraphernalia, and a clean pot in his draining rack in the background. And he's sitting in a relaxed posture, wearing a hoodie, with just a bit of an anti-establishment air about him. Stylistically, he speaks without a teleprompter or even a script. I'm sure he has the structure of the video in bullet form on his laptop, but that's it. The end product still has some ums and ahs in it with as few as possible mid-sentence edits. He also doesn't use too many visual cues. When he does want to refer to a diagram, he draws it out, Casey Neistat style. And he also doesn't do continuous eye contact just for the sake of perma eye contact. If he would naturally in a conversation have looked away while thinking deeply on a point and talk through his thinking aloud before making eye contact again, as is natural to many people, well, that's what he does in his videos. And substantively, he isn't afraid to share personal information from his life when relevant, like the effects of rapidly increasing asset prices on his friends and family's ability to buy homes. He's not just trying to make well-reasoned arguments for a particular policy change. He really wants you to know where he stands on a point and why. He also strikes a really good balance between not assuming the audience know the detailed underpinnings of the economics that he's talking about, while at the same time not coming across as being patronizing or condescending. The abiding feeling is that you've been there sitting at the kitchen table with him, and you've had a really interesting and honest conversation with him about something important. Obviously, a one-sided conversation, but the flow and the feel and the way that he brings you along on a journey with him make it feel a lot more like a conversation compared to like a talk or a speech that have a far more rigid structure to them and feel more like you're being spoken to rather than having a conversation with someone. And this feeling compounds with each additional video of his that you watch until you feel a real sense of connection with his cause, which in Gary's case is a non-partisan cause towards trying to deal with wealth inequality, but equally you could think of it in a partisan cause like getting elected to some sort of office or government position. But the growth on Gary's channel would have been far lower were it not for a macro shift that happened over the last year and a half. And this macro shift was a massive increase in the demand for media content addressing the issue of wealth inequality. The first hint I had at this macro change was that Gary was putting out very similar media prior to January 2024, which is when his subscribers started to grow massively. Sure, he's polished his approach over time, and he might have been on the couch in some earlier videos rather than at the kitchen table, but the massive upturn in subscribers doesn't seem to be linked to any sort of structural change in the nature or the delivery of Gary's videos. To test this more rigorously, I compared Gary's subscribers over time to that of another channel, one that would benefit from the same increase in demand for content of this nature, but one that was already very well established, a channel that existed long before Gary's and had lots of subscribers and maybe was already a household name on this topic. And who better to be a control channel than Bernie Sanders? Bernie's channel is almost a decade old, had almost 500,000 subscribers when Gary's channel had less than 10,000. And of course, as if you don't know this already, Bernie is perhaps the most well-known public figure advocating for a wealth tax. Now, as time ticks on into 2024, you see both channels simultaneously experiencing unusual growth in subscriber volumes, and the various accelerations over the subsequent year and a bit are very correlated. Sure, it's sometimes led by a month or two on Gary's channel, but this might be because the demand for such content in the UK led the US briefly. Or maybe the increased demand first found Gary's channel before Bernie's. It doesn't really matter. It's very clear that there has been a demand side impact on channels with this type of content. The timing of the impacts are very similar, but the scale is far larger on Gary's channel compared to Bernie's. Bottom line is that the wave of demand doubled Bernie's subscribers from 500,000 to 1 million and increased Gary's subscribers 13-fold from 100,000 subscribers to almost 1.3 million. It's possible that some of the explanation as to why Gary benefited so much more was because this wave of demand skewed towards younger viewers and Gary appeals to younger viewers more so than does Bernie. But I'm not 100% sure that that's true. I mean, we saw, and lots of people were surprised by how much Bernie Sanders appealed to young voters. In the same way that in the UK, everyone was surprised at how Jeremy Corbyn really resonated with younger voters. So it's not clear that just because Gary is younger than Bernie, that he necessarily appeals more to younger viewers. The take home is not that you need to wear a hoodie and sit at a kitchen table with a mug of tea if you want to have an effective strategy as a politician on YouTube. Rather, think about where you would be, what you would wear, how you would talk if a friend came to you asking you for some advice on something serious. Now substitute the YouTube viewer for that friend and talk to them about the issues that you are most passionate about and what you think needs to be done to solve them, and you'll have the startings of a winning formula for your YouTube channel. Look, it's not rocket science, but it can be very powerful if done well. And in fact, I think Mark Carney probably accidentally stumbled into this format. Remember the only video with double-digit current views for a video older than 2 weeks and which didn't have Mike Myers in it? It was Building Canada Strong, where he was at his dining room table having a cup of tea, maybe, I don't know what was in the mug, and briefly explaining why he thinks the housing shortage is a big issue and what he plans to do about it if elected. If it had less B-roll, more detail and personal sharing, and was much less of a highly produced campaign video, I think it could have reached a lot more people on a topic that they clearly want to hear more about from him. Also, if someone with YouTube Insight was running his channel, they would have very quickly picked up on this video as an outlier and doubled down on the format. But of course, all of this low-hanging fruit will remain unpicked until politicians recognize the outsized political benefits that they can generate from a small but well-executed investment into their YouTube channel. Franklin D. Roosevelt pioneered the use of radio in political campaigning in 1932 with his fireside chats. Dwight D. Eisenhower did the same with TV in 1952. And Obama was the first to use Twitter and Facebook as integral parts of his campaign in 2008. All these things seem quite mainstream now, but they weren't then. These politicians took quite a big risk, but they obviously paid off because they all became US presidents. Trump definitely moved the needle last year on online videos in terms of podcasts, but who will be the first major politician to take the risk on a YouTube channel that reveals a lot more of themselves, what they believe and why, in a much more personal way than is possible through other forms of media? It's only a matter of time.